ladies, I'm excited about this week's episode of Cups and Conversations. Did you know that each one of us has a unique life assignment that we have been called to walk purposefully in? However, purpose must be voice activated. In many cases, the key to success in your life's journey is finding your voice, accepting your voice, and moving forward in a unique life assignment. Today, I've invited a few friends on the show to discuss the power of your voice. Let's have a conversation. Hello friends, thank you for joining us today. I'm Teresa Cooper and I'm glad that you're here with me and my friends. Today I have with me again, if you're watching for the first time, Catherine Young. She's the director of Care Parenting Center, and I'm glad to have her. She's always by my side. She's my sidekick. Yes. We do our best work together. Yes. And I also have today with me Latanya Dessasaw. She is an executive at USA Today, and she's out there in the marketing world making it happen on an everyday basis in the corporate world, and I'm glad that she's here at the table with us. And then next to me today is also Chantal Small, and she's doing double duty. She's a pastor's wife, yes, yes. And she's also the executive director at Care Parenting and Pregnancy Center. So she oversees the parenting and the pregnancy center as the executive director. And I'm so glad to have you, Chantal.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. And so today we're going to have, this is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about empowerment and encouragement for you as women. But before we do that, I want to talk about your voice. Your vision, is voice activated. Your vision is voice activated. Whatever you see for your future is attached to what comes out of your mouth. What are you speaking? And so our cup today, I love this cup, ladies. It simply says, she believed she could, so she did. She believed she could, so she did. She had to put her voice in activation to declare what it was she wanted to see in her life. And so you can, you will, and together we're better. Yes? Yes. All right, let's get to talking today. Let's have a conversation. Whatever you see for yourself is set in motion by the creative power, ladies, of your spoken words. So we've got to start speaking things, and we've got to start believing in the power of our words, and that we actually have creative ability to shape our world and change things around us. That's right. You know, as I was thinking about this episode, one of the things that I was thinking about was that as long as I can remember it from a young girl, from 5 to 6 on up, one of the things that my mom always did, Chantal, is she had 4 girls, and she always would tell us, speak your mind. Don't be afraid to say what you think. You know what you want. You know what you want to say. Go ahead, speak up, speak up. She was always pushing us to speak up, and I didn't really think about it. At the time when I was younger, sometimes I felt like it felt a little pushy, I don't want to sound bossy, Ma, but as I grew up, I really realized that really what she was doing was she was teaching us to harness our voices and to understand that we could speak our minds, and it was okay, that she didn't want us to just be young girls in the corner going along, but she wanted us to be confident in that we knew what we wanted, and it was okay to speak up. Do you guys have any childhood memories or just times where when you really discovered that you can speak your mind?
I'd say when I was little, being the oldest of 4 kids, and being a girl, of course, that I had to really just assert myself in certain situations, especially being younger in the cousins line, and just, let myself be heard, especially with the female aspect of it. Growing up Hispanic, women were seen kind of less than, and so my mother definitely encouraged that for us, for our family.
Yeah, I know growing up that that phrase that we would often hear. I don't know if you've heard it in your family. Be seen and not heard.
Yes.
You know, we don't want to hear you. We want to see you. We want to know where you're at all times.
Yes.
But be quiet.
Right.
You know, and really what that did, subconsciously, it taught us to not speak up.
Right.
And that it wasn't okay to speak up.
Yes.
And I mean, knowing when the time to speak and the time to be quiet, and the etiquettes of a child, stay in your place. You're not an adult.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But at the same time, that having that balance, teaching them young as they're growing that it's okay to have an opinion or to have a certain thought about something, and that thought doesn't necessarily have to go along with everyone else.
That's right.
How about you, Catherine?
Well, growing up in the South, I'm the oldest as well, but it was a different mindset for us here down South because it was always the adults are talking. You be quiet. So then when you grow up into an adult, you have to adjust because you have been told so long, just calm down, you're a child. When adults are talking, you don't say anything. So that's how it was for me. So as I became an adult, grew older, I had to find my voice.
Right. You know what? For me, it was different. I had an older brother and a younger sister. So y'all know I was the middle child.
Okay.
So I had to fight for
Oh,
attention.
so did you have the Jan Brady syndrome?
Yes, I did. You know what? I think it still kind of bleeds into my life, today, but
Spills over.
a little.
Jan comes out. Marsha.
You know what? It was always my brother. He was a boy and he was older, so he just did what older boys do. And my sister was the baby. She was younger, so she did things and she got away with stuff. And I was the middle child.
And you hear those hands dropping.
I was the middle child. So I never got to do what he got to do or do what she got to do. So I had to fight for my voice.
You were sandwiched in the middle, and so you had to fight to be, and a lot of people go through that in their upbringing. Finding your voice or knowing the power of your voice sometimes can be hindered by our environment or the way that we were raised or our experiences. And so it's interesting. The first thing the doctors and the nurses do when a baby's born, what's the first thing they do? They listen when that baby comes down that canal. The first thing they're waiting to hear, they're waiting to hear the sound of that baby's cry. And so when we really think about, the topic, the power of your voice, that's something that is so innate that God put in all of us. He's given us the power of our voice, of sound, of it. Even at birth, to be actually the first thing that we do is cry out loud. And if a baby comes out and you don't hear that cry, everyone's nervous, everyone's concerned, because naturally we're to, our voice isn't to be restrained. And then we start growing up and everyone's telling us to be quiet. You're too loud. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what you're talking about, or you have the Jan Brady syndrome.
And you get to be 46 and still have the Jan Brady syndrome.
Right. And that's really what we're talking about, because there's people right now that need to know that there's life beyond the middle child. There's life beyond the Jan Brady syndrome. I'm a middle child. And a lot of times the middle child always plays the peacemaker, because the oldest child they got the authority. They've been given the permission to be in charge, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so, yeah, for sure.
And then the younger child has the permission to be just younger and taken care of and carefree, no concerns. And it's usually those children in the middle that feel like they're the peacemakers in the middle, making sure everybody gets along. And kumbaya, and with that, sometimes their voices are lost. They don't really say what they think or they feel, because they're either looking up to the oldest sibling, and this is not even the part of the, we're talking all off subject. They're either looking up to the older sibling or they're taking care of the younger sibling. So there they go, they have no voice. And so it's really important, before you can harness the power of your voice, you have to find it. And so what would you say is one of the things that causes you to lose your voice, Kathy?
Well, like I said, growing up, I was taught so much to stay in a child's place, be seen, like you said, and not heard, that when I became an adult and older, and being the older child, I could tend to be a little bossy. So I had to change a lot, because I didn't realize I was being bossy. To other people say, oh, you're a little bossy, or you're a little controlling. And I was like, oh my, because I realized where it stemmed from, me being young and had to control every situation. My mom was a single parent, so I was in charge of a lot of things. So with that being said, I had to learn to go from a level 10 down to about a 5.
Okay. Wow. How about you, LaTanya?
I'm listening to Kathy say she had to go from a 10 to a 5, and in my mind I'm thinking, like, you still at a 10. So I lost my thought.
So actually, do you feel like you're still measured, or do you feel like you've found your voice, and so now you know how to harness? When I say harness, you've learned how to control. You've accepted that you actually have something to say. You have something to offer, and so now you know. When I first got into ministry, one of the things that I determined at the very beginning was, as a woman, as a female pastor or female in ministry, the first thing I said that I was going to conquer was that I was not going to be in competition with my spouse, my husband. I wasn't going to play the I'm a woman too, so I could preach just as good as a man could preach. That I was going to harness that the most important thing for me was going to be, do I have a word from the Lord?
That's right.
And if I have a word from the Lord, then that's all that matters. And if I have a word from the Lord, I can share that word of the Lord on the pulpit, in the bathroom, in the parking lot, wherever is necessary. In other words, if you put up a roadblock, or if you make me a miniature pulpit and won't let me stand on the real pulpit, I don't got a problem with it. Just long as I got the word.
That's right.
As long as I'm coming with, the authority and the anointing. So I decided at the very beginning, I'm not going to play the gender game, or the gender, be in the gender war, because it's a war. It's real. It exists. But in order to harness your power, you got to kill those little wars on the inside. You know what I'm saying? And so I guess that's really the question. Once you went from a 5, you were a 10 down to a 5 as a child, and now that you're in full bloom, do you feel like you've harness that power, and you feel liberated to be and to speak all that you are and that God has put in you?
Yes. I feel like now that I've learned that I know how to control it and use it correctly. So for me, that's a plus for me, because I had to really look into it, because I'm an older child, my husband is an older child, so we were battling all the time, just really battling, because we were always taught how to handle our brothers and sisters. So we had to really, draw a fine line in there.
Okay. Well, how about you, Chantal?
Going back to something that you said, saying that it's the word from the Lord, having that confidence in that. So when I was growing up, I just know with our culture that we were brutally corrected. So if we were to say something, you were corrected to where your self-esteem was so low that you questioned whether you even had something to say at all. And so a lot of times, I remember even being in middle school, I could speak up for somebody, but I always wondered, am I going to say the right thing? And that lack of confidence in even the weight of my words. So I think for me personally, that's what the Lord's been really working on me, that you have something to say, and having the confidence that it's what He puts inside me to say is so much more powerful, because I can run with that versus my opinions.
And I love that, because it's the scripture that says it's not by might nor by power, but it's by my spirit, said the Lord. And then a very familiar person in the scriptures in the Old Testament, Jeremiah when he was a young man when God called him, and the first thing he said was, "I'm too young, and I don't know what to say. How will I know what to say?" And the Lord said to him, "I'll put the words in your mouth." And so that within itself is really the power. Within our own abilities, many times we may not have the words to say. We may not have the intellect or the intelligence or the education to match the circumstance. But with God, and yielding and saying that if He promised that He'll put the words in my mouth and I trust Him, then He'll equip me. And so having that confidence in not in your strength or in your power, but in the strength and the power of the Lord on the inside of you.
Absolutely. Something else someone told me recently that's kind of stuck with me is the Lord He won't just give you wisdom from made up situations. He will sometimes give you wisdom in the moment. And so sometimes I have to run with that because I think, I don't know if what I'm going to say is correct. But at the same time I said, but I have to speak. Son of man, open your mouth. And I have to speak and just believe that the Lord's going to give me what I need for the moment.
Right. And I think, finding your voice is living in the moment, because sometimes you don't even find that you actually have the answer until you take that leap of faith to say, well, I'm just going to say this, or I'm going to just share this. I don't know if it's going to help you, but I feel impressed to share it. And then as you're leaping in faith to share, you realize, okay, I didn't do too bad.
When I was being the middle child, I used to always say when I grew up I wanted to be a comedian because I wanted the spotlight. I wanted people to sit down and listen at me. So I wanted the spotlight. And so I grew up always having this idea in the back of my mind that one day I want the spotlight, that way people will hear me. And so it wasn't until I was maybe about 34 or 35 and I was married. And my husband, he didn't like, his personality isn't as big as mine.
No, it's not.
And so he didn't like all of that. He's like, you just need to calm down. And so when we were together, I always made sure I brought it down to a 5. And one day, and this is the day, I'll never forget the day that I found my voice. We were walking out of a department store. We were just walking to the car, holding hands, and out of nowhere, he turned to me and he said, you know what? I'm going to just let you be you.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
He said, you just be you. He said, I believe the Lord is telling me that I'm holding you back. And so it's like after he did that, I just went like Pac-Man, like my mouth. I just went like 90 to nothing, but it's almost like I needed permission. And I didn't realize I was waiting for permission. But when he said, I'm just be you, I'm going to let you do your thing.
And that's powerful. And I think most of the time people are looking within their association, in their group, their friends, their family, to give them the permission to find their voice or to release their voice. And that's beautiful. That God blessed you with a mate you guys walked a certain distance together. And he realized that I'm holding her back. There's more liberty, there's more freedom in her personality that she needs to be released in. And so he released you. That's amazing. I know.
Loved it.
So sometimes not finding your voice or losing your voice is a direct relation to our experience, our pain, struggles, insecurities. All these things impact the power of our voice. Sometimes it can slowly silence us, or just abruptly, like you were sharing within your culture, to just abruptly cut you off and to correct you, and sometimes that causes people to just turn off like a faucet. So our voice can be shaped by our environment. Have you found that after you've found your voice, and after maybe you've gotten a cause, or you've come into full awareness of what it is that you believe, like when I turned 40, it was just like, I know for a matter of fact, I'm like confident about this, that, and the other.
And so,
yes.
I remember that because before that you were real quiet, laid back, and when she turned 40, I was like, "Oh my God, I see it! I see it! I see it!"
It was on, yeah, and all of the insecurities and things that you were unsure about. I don't know what it is about the number 40. It just happened like an internal clock. It was just like, nope, I've lived long enough. I know exactly what I'm talking about, and you don't have to agree. I don't need your permission.
Right.
This is what I think. This is what I know, and this is what it is. And that's been my whole 40s. And it's a great place to be in. But at the same time, after you find your voice, I've also discovered that God will ask you to surrender it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he'll tell you everything's not about you, Teresa. And you're not always right. Have you guys experienced that?
Oh, yes. I actually use this phrase I got from one of my professors, I'm not going to die in that mountain today. And I was explaining this to my daughter the other day. She has a personality like my husband, so he could have been the best lawyer in the world because he'll ask a million questions and he, wants to get his point to show that he's right. And the other day I said to her, it doesn't matter sometimes if you're right. You have to learn your place, in the authority aspect of it. Even if your authority is wrong, for example, your place is to submit, for example. And so just learning when to say something and when not to, using that wisdom, even as little as 8 years old. I would say for me, for sure, was a big thing of they don't need an answer right now, or not every question deserves an answer. Not every response deserves another response,
and not every fight is your fight.
That's right.
And sometimes we're fighting fights that we haven't actually been healed of ourselves. Right. We've just, we found our voice, whether it's about domestic violence, or we found our voice about, gender equality, or we might have found our voice. We've discovered that we can actually be advocates for these things, but internally we haven't really resolved things internally, or we haven't, we haven't gotten over our pains or our traumas, and so sometimes, our voice projects as anger, or our voice projects pain, unresolved pain. It's the difference between being powerful and you can hear the power in what you're saying. It doesn't have the sting when you've walked past something. You know what I mean? How about you, LaTanya?
I was listening to you. I remember, after I discovered who I really was and I found my voice, and then, God has started blessing and giving me positions of authority in my career field and things of that nature. I remember at first coming in just, already I had this in my mind. They're going to have to hear me, they're going to have to know I'm in the room,
And you had that here.
Yes, and I was already going, but God had to really teach me to tone it down, because you don't have to be the angry black woman that needs to win. I know it. We don't have to do it. Don't do it, y'all. We don't have to do it. You don't have to come into the room, this is who I am.
But you know what, when you just saying that, the angry black woman or the angry POC, for those of you that don't know, POC means person of color. So that includes, Asians and Hispanics, all people of color, but that's a label sometimes. And we reject those labels because I'm more than my ethnicity.
Exactly.
But a lot of times I think people don't understand the underlining of that is if you've been in community, or you've been in culture, or you've been in environments where people haven't given you or allowed a seat at the table, or they haven't allowed you to speak your intelligence or your thoughts or your opinions. And so if that's repeated year after year, month after month, day after day, what happens is you turn into that person that, no, you finna listen to what I gotta say.
Hear me today.
Yo, today, it's today.
Tomorrow.
You know what God started dealing with me in that area, to where now I can just walk in the room.
Right.
I don't remember any of that.
Well, I'm gonna start doing it so you can see. But now I don't
key
have
part
to do that.
that God had to deal with
He had to
you.
deal with me with it.
That right, that you don't have to fight for yourself. That He says that He will fight for us, and so that's the whole. That's the beauty of the power of your voice and giving your voice to God, because then He says that the steps of a righteous person are ordered. So every door that I walk in is a door that's been ordered by God, and if it's been ordered by God, then I can walk into it without any this and that, and you gonna hear me today because God's with me and on my side. Ladies, this has been wonderful. Before we end, I want to say this quote. We're not actually ending, but I do want to put this quote in. That find your voice and inspire others to find theirs. That's by Stephen Covey. And I love that when I read that, because so many times we're so focused on finding our voices that we forget that there's young girls and young men behind us that we need to help them find their voice. You know, and so
and also it's like you have to find people that appreciate your voice.
Yes.
You know, for a long time I have always been animated and always been level 10.
Really?
But I always would shrink around people to make them feel good.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But then I'm like you, I had that moment. I'm like, well, I ain't everybody cup of tea.
Right.
I just have to do me. And then you know how to do certain places. But I found people that appreciated my voice, who appreciated my animation, who enjoyed laughter. When it's time to be serious, it's time to be serious. But women who really appreciate who I was.
You know, something else I was thinking about with that quote you read and along what you're saying is that someone had said one time that, you know, you lead in your strengths, but you connect in your weaknesses. And people, like, for example, for me, I was an extreme shy introvert when I was younger, and the Lord had to really help me overcome that. And, you know, with the Gideon mindset, like, greetings, valiant warrior, calling him a valiant warrior when he's hiding in the wine press, you know. And people that don't see that part of me, because they don't know that part of me, I can connect with them and say, listen, just as you are right now, the Lord was able to grow me out of that, you know. And just how you were saying with what you're saying, you know, you were able to say, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be this way, and connecting with those people that are struggling to find their voice and saying, I was just like that, you know, here's how God changed me. I think that's a part of just saying, find your voice like I found mine.
I remember when I first met Chantal, and she was interviewing me because she's my boss. And I went in highly animated. And I was thinking about it afterwards. I was like, oh my goodness. But I just couldn't turn it off. I knew how to be respectful. I knew how to do an interview. But she and I talked for over an hour just giggling and laughing because she accepted my personality and who I was, and I was glad of that, because sometimes some people will try to say, come way down. But when I met her, we just connected so well. And what an interview is supposed to be, you'd say 30 minutes. We were just in there over an hour, laughing and giggling, still doing job things. But she was able to connect with who I was, and I didn't have to go in there all staunch and, you know.
What about when you met me?
Oh, Lord.
I was just asking. I just wondered if you remember.
I cannot forget.
Just check it. Middle child.
Pastor T was very quiet and laid back, but when I got around, I stirred her up to act out and to act up, and I still do, to make her laugh, because I knew my purpose in her life. We have to know our purpose in people's lives.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. And accept them for, you know, what they bring to the table, and not be afraid of their power, you know, and their strengths. That's what real sister friends are, is accepting, you know, each other's, not just each other's weaknesses. I don't want to just want people to be around me that accept me for my flaws, because, you know, like, you know, they look good if I look bad. You know what I mean? Or we're both together, we both got issues. So that's what we have in common. How about you got more than what I got, and I need to be with you because you got more than what I've got. You know what I'm saying? And so it's that we bring different things, different strengths to the table, and we complement each other, you know? And so accepting each other's power and authority and strengths that we bring. You know, that's important. You know, Proverbs 31:8. Let me see. The scripture says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed." And when we talk about the knowing the power of your voice, really understanding that we're not talking about just, you know, being powerful for the sake of being powerful, but powerful with a mission, with a purpose, to make a difference in the earth and to impact. You know, if you can't impact globally, then impact in your neighborhood. If you can't touch your neighborhood, then by God, do something in your family. You know what I'm saying? Touch your family, but make your life bigger than just you.
That's good. Yes.
You know, that's really understanding your power, that you have the potential to duplicate the gifts that God has put in you, that you can share those with other people and be a blessing and be an encourager to other people.
That's really good.
Wouldn't you say?
I would say so for sure.
Absolutely. Do any of you ladies have a scripture that you would like to share that would lend to the conversation?
Yes, I have one. Isaiah 26:3, it says, "You, Lord, give perfect peace to those who keep their purpose firm and put their trust in you." Our purpose, what God has called us to do, the purpose of our voice.
Yes.
And we have to remember this voice that he gave us, to use it for his glory, no matter how he made us. And we have to remember that we can't be anybody else.
Right.
Whatever he called to do that and use your voice. I remember you had a quote one time. You say, "Remember, use what you have, your powers, for good and not for evil." Yes, because he has given us some power.
Oh yes, he has. Women, he has given us power. The first every person in the earth had to go through a woman's womb to get here. So there's definitely an authority and a power just in our bodies that God has invested in us. And so it's not a hard thing. It should be an easy thing for us to give that power and that authority back to him and say, "Use me how you would desire to use me." I love this cup. It simply says, "She believed she could, so she did." I hope you were encouraged today to activate your vision, your future, by the power of your voice. Speak it and watch God get behind your voice. God bless. What a great discussion we had today. My prayer for you is that you would find your voice and understand just how powerful that is. You, my friend, have the capability to possess a voice of influence and impact. In discovering the authentic you, be unashamed, uninhibited to release the originality of your God-given voice. Activate others and help them to discover the power of who they are. I've enjoyed our time together today. And if you've enjoyed our time as well, make sure to like and to share. Check us out across our social media platforms and join us next week for more cups and conversation.